Four bullets blasted through the door and through Professor Liviu's body. The lone gunman was on a rampage at Virginia Tech and was spotted by the professor as he approached the classroom. The professor stood by the door to block it, instructing all his students to quickly exit out of the window, just before he was gunned down. On that day, the 17th of April 2007, Professor Liviu Librescu showed unflinching courage by choosing to protect the lives of his students at the cost of his own. Toastmaster of the day, fellow Toastmasters and guests, good evening.
Good evening.
This was my introduction at an international speech contest. Did you think it was gripping? No reaction?
Yes, it was.
Okay. And do you think that you would like for it to continue so that you could hear some more?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So that I have achieved my purpose. I'm not going to continue because I have a workshop to deliver and not a speech today. But that is the idea of an introduction. When you have an introduction to an international speech, it should grip you, it should hold you, it should make you sit on the edge of your seat. You should have the people in the palm of your hand listening to you. Not like Mohit the other day, who was watching Virat Kohli on his little phone instead of listening to the speaker, right? So when you have your introduction, the element of gripping and holding you there is most important, is most vital. And how do you do it? I have handouts. Sushi, I have handouts for everybody at the end of this, okay? So I'm going to hold your attention right now. There are many ways to have superb introductions. One is a simple story that captivates your audience. So storytelling is very important. Secondly, you can ask an interesting question. What happened at midnight on the 14th of August, 1947? People are thinking. You are generating interest by a question. You can have a supremely eloquent quotation which will surprise. A statement like, 40,000 whales were killed last year. You're horrified, but it's startling. When Mohammad Talani, our world champion last year, came on stage, he dug his hand into his pocket and pulled out a cigarette. It shocked the audience that he had a cigarette in his hand, and he did what? And everybody laughed because he had done something shocking. So that is the way you have brilliant introductions. And then of course there are people who are so humorous, they like to open with a joke. So these 5 ways to have your introduction is very vital. Because remember, if you are weak in your introduction, you have lost the plot. People are not going to want to listen to you further. You captivate them, you hold them when you have a strong introduction. So, once you have got a good introduction, you are already on your journey to making a great international speech. So, what is an international speech?
Captivating the audience all throughout.
Yeah, but what is the essence of an international speech?
Good content, good delivery style.
Good content, good delivery, inspiring. The one word that always comes to my mind is if you have not inspired and people are not in that aha factor when they are leaving the audience, you have really not been that inspirational. So, and in international speech for our context in Toastmasters is a 5 to 7 minute speech, which has a message that you want to give to the audience. And that is what our speeches are about. Next month, all of the clubs in Pune are going to have an international speech contest. So when you start, think of your topic first. Now, once the introduction is over, we are going to move into the main body of the speech. You have just completed only 30 seconds of your speech, and in the body, you have to add another 5 to 6 minutes. This body of your speech should be broken up into 3, maximum 4 parts. You should not have more than 4 ideas in the body, because if you do, that's just an overload for people to listen to. Now, your original idea, your original thought, original message has to be woven into the body of your speech. So each of the 3 or 4 parts should have your message in it. But if you just keep on banging out that message, it's going to be monotonous. So, after you have thought of the idea of your main speech, you must think of ways to bring variety to your speech. And the different 3 ways to bring variety is by having conversation. And here, once again, I am going to use Mamad Katani's speech as a base to explain to you what I mean by variety. When Mamad Katani first opened his first paragraph in the main body, he spoke about his little son who loved to paint on the walls. And he went down on his knees and said, "Son, you are grown up." And his son felt good about it. So what he did is he had dialogue. So in your speech, one element that you should try and include is dialogue. Otherwise, it just becomes a monotone. The second thing that he used was mimicry. He talks about this professor who's just mumbling and jumbling words and vocabulary, and it makes no sense to anybody. And he mimics that professor and said, or scientist, and says, all that mumbling and jumbling has no value because it is not audible. It makes no sense. So he mimicked the professor and used a different technique to deliver that message. In the third part, he used a lot of action. He talks about his friend who was not valued by the father, and he takes to drinking and drugs and is finally in the hospital. And then he calls out to his friend, "Why did you do it?" And he tells you how the doctors tried to save that boy's life by trying to bring him, resuscitate him. And he used a lot of action. So he used a variety of techniques in the main body of his speech, which made it so interesting. Those of you who have got a humorous bone, add value to your speech with a little humor. But please remember that when you have these 3 different sections, you've got to connect them. And therefore, you should have very good transitions between each section. But keeping in mind that the main message is never lost. Finally, you must, at the end of your body, the main structure, your message should be paramount. It should be inspirational. And here I'm going to tell you a little story about how Aditya, last week in the club officers training, he spoke that when you are giving an inspiring speech, everybody can say, "Wow, it's fantastic." But did it connect? That inspirational speech can have a aha factor, but does it make sense to you as a person? Does it connect with you? Here I'd like to give you another story of my son. He was in Algeria Algeria maybe 12 or 13 years ago. There was an earthquake in Algeria. 3,000 people died in the earthquake. Now, if I give a speech on earthquakes and how people are devastated and how the ordinary man comes to rescue them, that's inspiring. The ordinary man on the street has come to help these people and their families. But if I tell you that my son was over there, he was one of those people who had to dig graves because they needed help to bury the dead faster than they needed. That might connect with you because that is my story, that is my personal story. And I am creating an impact because you will remember that Mukta's son was over there. And if I tell you that he dug a grave to bury his own colleague, that will make an impact. Not the 3,000 people. We do feel, but the connection is where it is personal. So that is the body that you are now covering for 5 to 6 minutes. Finally, you go to the conclusion and you say to yourself in your mind, I have only 1 minute left to conclude, and yay, I have finished my speech. But that 1 minute is the make or the break. Because if you don't carry that momentum in that last final minute and you don't deliver the punch, everything is lost. And if you have not spoken in that last minute passionately, you will not seal the deal. If you don't appeal to the person's emotion, to their values in that last minute, you will lose what you have built up to that moment. So dear friends, every part of the speech is really important when you do an international speech. So today, let me give you guidelines as to how you can come to this point. Before the contest, I have 8 guidelines, very quickly. First is your idea. Think of something which appeals to you, which makes sense, which will connect. Not somebody else's idea. Something that you believe in. That is number 1, the idea. Number 2, write. Don't think you can come and do extempo for 7 minutes in an international speech contest. You cannot. No matter how good you are, you need to write. You need to edit. You need to rewrite. You need to re-edit. And that process will go on and on and on till you finally come with something substantial, something that you feel good about. The third thing is time. Remember, you have only 5 to 7 minutes. My speaking rate is slightly slow. Somebody else might speak a little faster. But on an average, 100 to 120 words per minute is the standard. So write a speech which will be about 750 to 800 words maximum for your speech. Try and introduce a little humor if you can. Remember to have your transitions. Do not forget them. Keep your language simple because you're talking to people. They need to understand you. It's nice to have a few special words when you're writing. Remove one simple word, add something which is more refreshing, more interesting. But generally, keep it simple for the audience. Choose a title because your judges, before they even see you and hear you, are going to read the title. That sounds interesting. Keep the title short, very short. I suggest just 3 to 4 words. Like Muhammad Khatami had, the power of words. Ryan Avery, the champion before him, trust is a must. Catchy little titles, very important. Then, if you must have a prop, which you are allowed to, keep it to one single prop. One chair, one rose, one letter in your pocket, one cigarette. Keep your prop to a minimum. Don't have many because then it looks very confusing for the people to understand. And another thing, do not change your script which you have written at least 8 days before the contest. People think, oh, I should change this. We are not champions yet. So we don't have that ability to improvise on the spot. So see your matter and stay with it for the moment. When you move on to the next stage, make those few changes. This is the judges' ballot form. I tell everyone who's taking part in any contest, whether it is the international speech, table topics, evaluation, or humorous, read this judges' form. Know what the judges are going to judge you on. This international speech form says content is 50%, delivery is 30%, and language is 20%. Are you going to lose out on that 50 because you're not prepared well? No. So make that content really great because you want that 50%. Brush up on your language skills. Do your delivery, which is fantastic. There's 30% for delivery. Read this form well. Ask your VP Education to pass this on or go onto the Toastmasters website and download it for yourself. The second document which everybody must read is the contest rule book. Toastmasters has worked for 90 years and year after year they come up with an updated version of the rule book. As a contestant, you must know what is in this rule book. You must know what your rights are. If you feel that somebody else has picked up a speech from the internet and delivered it, it is your right to protest, and you can protest. So know your rights. Finally, you are at the contest. You have done all this preparation. Come to the stage with comfortable clothing. This is one thing that a lot of people make a mistake. They come and they adjust their clothes and they touch their hair. They're not ready. And nobody wants to see those little things. You come so that your hands are free, your face is free, you're looking smart, and you win over the judges with your appearance, whether it's on the balance sheet or not. So come smartly dressed. Give an inspiring speech. And lastly, remember that these days especially, although one should be looking at grammar, pronunciation, and accent, with more and more participants from the Asian countries and the Far Eastern countries, I think the judges have become a little lax on that at the international level. Finally, I have my 5 P's to make a speech absolutely fantastic. First is the preparation. I've already given you 8 to 9 points on the preparation. Preparation is key to doing a good speech. The second P is the practice. You can't just write it and say, I've written such a fabulous speech, it's going to win. You have to practice. Find a friend. Take help from somebody to practice your speech with. Look at the mirror and you know if your actions are good, if your facial expression is good. Ask your brother, sister, husband, wife, anybody to help you practice. Third P is the presentation. When you finally come to the stage to present, you have to own that stage. You have to use the entire length of the stage and move confidently. Your delivery, your voice, you look to the back of the room, to every side of the room. That is your presentation. Your fourth P is your personal story. When you have personalized it, you have touched every individual in the room. Nobody goes unscathed. Nobody does not shed a tear. Nobody does not have a laugh when you have cracked a joke. Because you have touched everybody. You have personalized the story. And the last P for me is passion. If I do not speak with passion, everything that I have said about preparation and presentation and practice is nothing. You are passionate about what you say and you are a winner. I hope you all do well. I hope you compete in the international speech contest. Take it seriously. You have time to follow all these 5 Ps, and good luck to all of you. Back to you.